Hey everybody, it's the Professor, and once again, it's the one and only Blue Pill Professor, coming at you from the internet and talking to you about the things we really care about, namely, the nature of women, and what we are all going to do about it now that we have awoken from our long slumber.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true. Wanted a woman, never bargained for you. Lots of people talking, few of them know. Soul of a woman was created below.
This week on the question of whether a woman's soul was created below, we turn a little closer to home and use an example from blogger Rollo Tomasi, who this week, in a response to a post from the famed female troll Insanity Bite, explained how he discovered the manosphere. It was when his brother-in-law hung himself over his impending divorce with his wife's sister, less than 3 months before she announced that she was marrying her millionaire concrete mogul boyfriend that she'd met in a church group. Of course, she met him 3 to 4 months before. She had decided to divorce her husband of 20 years, and Rollo explains that his red pill awakening began when he explained the story to some co-worker women, and every one of them took the side of the sister-in-law, saying that she had moved on from her barely-in-the-ground husband and that he should be happy for her. Well, I decided to put this to the test. For those of you who are fans of me, I blog on Married Red Pill, a Reddit blog that deals with, well, what I'm talking about in these podcasts. And my wife happens to be an attorney. She's very successful, she's very smart, and she's really one of the least solipsistic females I have ever met. So I thought I would tell her this little story. To no one's surprise, she took the side of the unknown woman over the man who had killed himself over her. Oh, you can't blame her. This from a woman, any woman really, who would have no problem blaming a man for driving a woman to suicide. But I am happy to be able to provide yet another example of why a woman's soul was indeed created below. So this week we're going to finish up the required readings on the Married Red Pill Sidebar, and then, as I've indicated before, we will move on to game and finish up this Married Red Pill basic class with a dread game primer based on my soon-to-be best-selling book, Saving a Low-Sex Marriage, A Man's Guide to Dread, Seduction, and the Long Game. But for today, we are going to be doing the book When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. I did a blog post on this, so I'm going to be mostly reading that for this answer because it's very similar to what I would do with the unscripted version of these books. I basically went through my 240 notes that I took in this book on my Kindle and reread them, writing up the following essay. I say, When I Say No, I Feel Guilty is a book by a clinical psychologist type who does well established and accepted in mainstream circles assertiveness training. In such mainstream work, it could not be avoided that there is no doubt the stench of the blue pill around this book. It permeates it, in fact. The author makes no distinction between men and women, and apparently is unaware that there are actual differences. Still, it offers some strengths for a lot of beaten down married guys in actually learning some of this basic assertiveness bullshit. We have literally had it beaten out of us, and this book shows us how to get some of it back without blowing the entire thing to hell and back. In this post, I will give you my profile of the book based on the 240 highlights I made when I read it first time. Your impression of the book may differ, so When I Say No, I Feel Guilty begins with a long-winded explanation about why we are having trouble saying no. He explains our basic instincts in the fight or flight response most of us learned in middle school. In case you were in the smoke hole with the other stoners during this class, when you're stressed out, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in and you get anxious, pounding heart, blah blah, you know what happens. So here's the deal. When we need to confront another mind, when we oppose another person, we get that anxious, pulse-pounding response. Why? Because we get that feeling when we're in danger, and we are compelled to fight or run like hell. So he finally explains on page 243, the people fascinated by the charging saber-toothed tiger are gone. That's about the extent of his evolutionary psychology theory. So if you're looking for an explanation of why, you will not find it in this book. What you will find is practical advice. Because why are we afraid to say no, and why does saying no activate the sympathetic nervous system? Because in order to control us as young children, our parents accessed this fear response of being in danger and related it using classical conditioning to any opposition to them or to authority in general. Your parents condition you to respond with anxiety and pulse-pounding fear to any opposition. Don't blame them. They had to do it. And if you don't understand why, then let me just guess that you are not a parent. And you probably don't even know the first word little kids learn when they use it for about the first year, almost non-stop. Do you know the word, guys? Yes. Mom, no, it's no. So mom trains not to say no all the time. And she bends you to amorphous authority. She emotionally manipulates you with puppet puppet strings as soon as you can respond. That's a good boy, or that's a bad boy, is still very effective, gentlemen. Marriage alert. So the first step in being assertive is to recognize that no one can manipulate your emotions or your bad behavior if you do not allow it to happen. We see that Epictetus said this on previous podcasts, but the author of Wisnifg states that there are several assertive rights, and he spends a painful amount of time on these. These assertive rights are that you and only you judge your behavior. You have the right to offer no reason for your decision. You are not responsible for solving another person's problem unless you decide that you are. In other words, you don't have a duty unless you assume a duty. And basically, all of these assertive rights boil down to you have the right to not take bullshit from other people and to not give a flying fuck what they think about you. Turns out, people like you a lot better when you start doing whatever the hell you want to do without being a bitch about it. Who knew, right? Then he gets into the meat and potatoes of this book and offers some basic assertiveness tools for asserting yourself and getting what you want. And you will note, if you're experienced and you read this book, that all of the tools he offers are really just examples of holding frame and not getting butthurt. In other words, responding to a verbal shit test. So the first tool is fogging. You use fogging to deflect criticism and emotional manipulation by seeming to agree in principle and then expressing your need, want, or desire. In fogging, you basically throw fog all over the place, and if she wants to flail around, all she's going to hit is fog. So for example, when a woman is bitching and blabbing, blah blah, you forgot to take out the trash. In order to successfully fog, you agree with the assertion by tying it to one of her emotions that she is expressing. So you say, I understand you're upset that I forgot to take out the trash. Well, think about that for a minute, guys. What can she now do? You're telling her you understand. Is she going to argue that you don't understand? That's a difficult thing to do. I mean, really, how does she know that you don't understand? So again, she can flail around, but she can't hit anything in the fog. Fogging is also very effective when used with broken record. In the broken record, you simply have a statement that you repeat, and it is a very effective technique for getting what you want. You acknowledge the other person, and then you repeat your preference. So when used with fogging, you can simply say over and over again, I understand that you're upset that I didn't take out the trash. I will take it out next week and bag it up right now. Then when she brings it up again, yes, I understand that you're upset I took out the trash. It's all bagged up in bins and I'll take it out next week. Just repeat yourself every time she brings it up. So basically, this book is full of assertiveness training seminar transcripts of people practicing assertiveness. So for example, when somebody is trying to sell you X, I think X would be useful for lots of people, but I'm not interested in buying X. Note the fogging and the broken record. You simply repeat each time they deliver the sales pitch, and it's not going to take very many repetitions before they go away. So in a red pill context, fogging can be used very effectively with Negs and with shit test responses. Things such as agree and amplify. I don't think I've talked about Negs before, but Negs are a pickup artist concept where you basically put down the girl, or at a minimum put down the idea of a relationship with the girl. For example, when she does something, just roll your eyes and say, oh, we would never work out. We can't be together. And you'll note it's a neg. It's a negative hit. It's not a cruel jab. Just a little poke, a little bit of having fun. So, for example, when a wife says, all you ever do is think about sex, the proper response is agree and amplify. But you can always add a little fogging in first. You are under the impression I only think about sex? Note how this is fogging or acknowledging her statement. And then you state your assertion. I assure you, I also think about blowjobs and butt sex. And you'll note how this combines the assertion with the concept of agree and amplify. And if you repeat it over and over again every time she whines that statement, this is an example of broken record. Another assertiveness technique is the negative inquiry or negative assertion. I should say and to the negative assertion. These are just branches of fogging when you actively prompt criticism of you by prompting further statements of wrongdoing. So the wife says, and then you do stuff, and then you did things, and you even did blah. The husband says, I certainly do stuff, and I do things, and blah a lot. But it was worse when and then you continue the negative assertion. Remember when I was supposed to be watching the kids and he fell and broke out his tooth? That was a lot worse than this one. An example of a negative assertion, which again is basically agree and amplify. Another example in the book is in response to criticism of a fishing trip. A negative inquiry is what makes you think that going fishing is bad? You're inviting her to negatively assert statements on behalf of her nagging. So the wife responds, because it's pointless and the fish are smelly and you get tired. So the husband responds, what is it about doing something pointless and being tired or handling fish that is bad? However, at this point the author comments that being sarcastic with a negative inquiry used together can result in domestic violence, presumably with the woman attempting to clock you with a pan. So don't be sarcastic with your negative inquiries, but you can be pretty sarcastic with your negative assertion. So if you're inviting criticism, don't be a douchebag about it and piss her off by being a sarcastic jerk. But if you are stating something to ridiculous proportions, that is, agree and amplify, folks, then feel free to be as sarcastic as you want. Just say it with a smile. Another assertiveness technique is the workable compromise. So instead of outright fogging, you offer a carrot and a halfway point that is consistent with your goal, but still may satisfy your wife. And I gave that example earlier of offering the solution of bagging up the trash right now and taking it out next week. That was really an example of a workable compromise. Another example is husband says, you're right, I don't do stuff or things and blah, so I will start doing stuff, but I'm not doing things and blah. In other words, concede part of the argument, but hold on to your primary values. In other words, hold frame. Another technique is self-disclosure. You give a piece of personal information with your fogging. And again, this can be a negative assertion about yourself. For example, the wife says, why are you at the gym all the time? Have a cupcake. The husband responds, you're right, I don't want to lift every day, but I'm done being a weak fatty, so we have to. And gentlemen, that is basically it in this entire several hundred-page book. Those are a summary of the techniques that he offered. And you need to read the book because when I present a few examples, it seems limited. But when you read page after page after page of assertiveness training transcript, you can see that these apply broadly to many, many different types of interactions. And furthermore, these little ideas and techniques are just little tweaks that smooth conversation immensely and that give you the confidence to ultimately say no. And the final thing in this book that I noted in my notes is that he gives us some sexual assertiveness training. And he offers the little known tip that many, in other words, a lot of sexual problems are rooted in the passive, aggressive, non-assertiveness or manipulative style of the sexual partner. To which I say, no kidding. The solution he offers and the solution Red Pill offers is to be direct about your sexual wants and desires. And the final contribution that I see he made is he identified two models for explaining low sex marriages. The first is the anxiety model. In other words, the guy can't get it up, the woman can't get wet, with you anyway, because they are anxious about their sexual performance. The solution is desensitization therapy, and it is nearly 100% effective. However, the more common and probably 99% of guys in Married Red Pill is the anger model. And this is when the sex trails off over a long period of time, that is months or years, he didn't say it, but after the honeymoon, due to one partner being angry, that is the woman, at and unconsciously, allegedly, wanting to punish the other partner. But he offers an awful mismatch of blue pill nonsense as the solution. Resolve the anger, which is man bad, must work harder to resolve woman's anger. And my favorite, conjoint sexual therapy. Don't worry about improvement or dominance, but work harder to resolve the woman's anger. And women, pretend to like it and throw a bone to him once in a while so you can keep getting paid. And I conclude by saying, for the record, the Red Pill solution that should have been at the end of this book is to give the guy a swift, hard kick in the ass, and the woman a good, hard kick in the ass, telling her to knock it the fuck off, stop being a bitch. She's lucky. And guys, you take that kick in the ass and realize the same thing. She's lucky to have. And in conclusion, I believe the final question of the book should have been something like, now you know how to avoid being a total cunt. Your next task, if you can do it, is to stop being a bitch. But most important of all, bro, do you even lift? So next week we will cover game, and then I'll do a multi-part series on Dread Game and do a summary of my book, possibly chapter by chapter. And we will conclude this Married Red Pill basic class and hopefully move on to more advanced concepts when we are done. But for now, that music means my time is up. So as always, I leave you with the words and wisdom of Mr. Robert Plant, and let's up.
But now's the time to look and look again at what you see. Is that the way it ought to stay?